Okay, I'm recording this class today for the benefit of our other student who has orientation this week and can't be here. Also, I'll be posting the video within the shell if you want to go back and review anything, if that's of interest to you. So we're going to start off by going through this. You got my message about the username being replicator with no password. So you all know how to get into the software. Make sure each day you start new. Because if you'll note on the sign-in screen, which will, great. Veronica, would you shut the lights out, please? Thank you. Let's see if we can make this work this time without beating on it. Yeah, there we go. Note here that there is a date. If you do not restart every day, so you need to log out at night, exit from the program each night, start again each day, so that you have a fresh date. You will get error messages if you try to use it in some of the applications with the wrong date. Simple. So we're doing that. So you know that we use the word replicator. You do not need caps or caps locks. The default here for almost all fields is caps. There are a couple of fields I'll point out where comment fields where we use lowercase letters. Okay. Okay, let's get this here. So when we continue, it comes up with the start screen. The start screen here, you'll note, has a series of buttons, radio buttons down the left side for the various functions. Fill RXs. RX is a prescription, of course. Fill prescriptions is your first one. Doctors, customers, drugs, insurance plans, and there are some other features as well. You'll note that at the top menu bar, many of these same things are there. If you look at prescriptions, data allows us to put in customers, doctors. So there's some drop-down menus that will appear, and some of those will appear in some of the assignments. You'll have to use the drop-downs for these things. There are a couple of other things, some status here. There are no new e-prescriptions. There are no approved refills showing. As you go through here, some of these things may actually change as you get things registered. We can enter customers, we can enter doctors, we can edit them. We can do a lot of things with this program that reflect the way they work. Navigation is pretty easy once you understand the way it works. And it will lead you through most of them without a problem. So if we look at our first task is to enter a doctor. So when we click on doctors, what comes up is a screen and you see a name. The name is the very first entry, and this is the case with customers, with drugs, with everything. The very first entry in the database of those names. I'm pretty certain that the way this is written, it uses Microsoft's Access database. So not the world's best database program, but it does work well enough for this purpose. You'll see that in the, not every field is filled. The only field that's absolutely necessary is the name of the doctor. Okay. Now, note here, there's this little moving finger. This isn't meant to be an obscene gesture. It's meant to be what you do next. So the spyglass is just like you recognize from all other Windows applications. It's a search function. Okay. If you push on that, note that it brings up a different screen. Okay. If we want to search for, let's just go down here and look for Dr. Adams. Okay. If we type in the first three letters, this is what we generally do. This is our default. Whenever we're doing a search for a drug, a patient, a doctor, we type in the first three letters of the last name of the person or the customer or the doctor, or the first three letters of the drug name for the drug. The drug name can be generic, or it can be trade name. We talked about the difference between generic and trade names the other day. They then should cross-reference that. So note, we get a list, a much shorter list of doctors here, and we can simply, if we want John Adams, you'll note, if you remember your American history, they've chosen some names here out of American history. We'll see those in various places. So if we simply click on that, we can either click OK, or we can double click on the name and it brings it up. Now note that, again, the pointer has moved. We bring up an entry. We obviously have brought it up for a purpose. Generally, that purpose is going to be to edit. So we have this symbol is the edit symbol. The X is delete. If you click that, you'll lose the doctor. This symbol over here on the far side of this sort of beige bar is the save symbol, or the close symbol rather. We have save. Note that it's not highlighted, so you can't save anything you haven't edited. All right, so as we change things, these buttons up here will change. All right, so it's actually a fairly good one for that. These arrows are basically ways of navigating through the database, typical. We can either go to the beginning of the list, or the end of the list, or next, or prior. We can bring up the list. We can print. Don't bother with printing. We're not set up to print. It's not going to automatically go to the student printer. It won't work. We haven't set it up that way, and we won't be, at least not for now. So the first thing you do is edit it. Now note these fields. We have a number of fields. The name, a contact at the office, the address, etc. Office phones, faxes, other numbers that we might need, email contact for the doctor, quick code. This is just a fast way of finding a doctor or a patient or a drug, the quick code. Specialty code, in this case, 01 is going to be a generalist. Okay. NPI is the National Provider Identification Number. This is one of the things that you will often have to insert into a record because in many cases it will not accept a prescription without an NPI. The database has holes in it. Many of them are deliberate, so that you have to go back then and fix the database. This gives you practice with maneuvering. State license number, DEA number is here. The DEA number is something that, again, first letter is the type of provider. Hospitals have their own symbol. Pharmacies have their own symbol. Anyone who has the ability to prescribe or dispense a controlled substance must have a DEA number. Many doctors will have their own for their private practice, but they will, when they're working within the confines of a hospital, they will use the hospital's account because the hospital is actually dispensing the medication. Okay, so just has to be validated. In those cases, and remember the second letter here is the first letter of the last name of the prescriber. And remember, we can check the DEA number. We did that in class on Monday. State license number goes in. There are obviously many, many other numbers. Clearly, we do not have to have them all in there. And in fact, as I said, the only real requirement is the name to create the entity. If you try to use it without all that information, you'll be told that we have to give it. We don't have the information. So looking in here, we also have notifications as to the type of coverage. We can list a hospital that the doctor is affiliated with. Doctors can be affiliated with multiple hospitals. They usually are. Okay. So we have all of this information goes in there. We're going to close this out now and go take a look at customers because you'll do some customer additions. This screen is different, obviously, because we have different kinds of information. In fact, this screen has several different fields. We have the customer itself. We have any sort of workers' comp information that goes in. Inpatient information is for people, obviously, in an institution. Okay? And then miscellaneous information has a number of different fields in it. Okay, so the customer, that's the top part. The bottom part also has a number of fields. We have, notice here, we can put in a tremendous amount of information. Mostly we're not going to be doing that here. The important things for us in this particular class are insurance plans that they may have, allergies. We can list the allergies here, other drugs they are taking, disease profile, what are their diagnoses? Okay. And we can also put in, obviously, administration types. There are treatment orders. There are all sorts of other things that we can put in. You will see a few of these. You will be asked to put in possibly allergies or other drugs that patients are taking to fill out these fields. But again, when we first go into it, you notice that the pointer was set on search. And again, Abston, Kinley Abston, is the first patient in the patient database. When you add a patient, it will update the database. So your database will be changing every time you are in here. And that's fine. That's what it's supposed to do. Again, if we're working with this customer, the first thing we have to do if we want to change anything is edit. If you try to do something and nothing happens, think to yourself, oh yeah, I have to edit. And that should work. We have other things. The various numbers that we have, insurance information that we have, all of this information is here. Notes, we have family members. Okay. In this case, it looks like the only family member listed is Kinley Abston themselves. Notes. Here, there's a note here that the patient is allergic to Zithromax, which is this azithromycin. Note that there are no allergies listed. Okay, so it's in the note, but we don't have it listed. So we can find this out one way or another. This should be listed in the allergies at some point. You'll be probably entering some of those, not necessarily for Abstin. This is a male, so we have gender, we have insurance for the patient. Q code is the quick code again. Note that the quick code is the initials of the patient, first initial, last initial, and then in text form, a 6-letter, or not in numerical form, a 6-letter version of birth date in all cases. That's the way they've set this up. Quick codes can be almost anything you want them to be. One thing you should never do for a quick code, a social security number. Okay, that is protected health information under HIPAA. So we don't use that. So we have the same thing here. So we have lots of different fields. So let's close out of this and go to drugs. The drug database is large, but it's not complete. I'm not sure when this was updated, and updating it in this particular program is not real easy. So we have several things. Ignore, when you are doing drug entries, and you will enter drugs into the database, when you are doing drug entries, ignore the FDB standard name. That's not important. We have a label name. That's what would go on a prescription label. So obviously that's important. We can put in quick codes. Alchemy ID. Alchemy is a database that's used to validate the proper drugs. Drug class, in this particular case, the 3-day vaginal cream. Obviously, this is an alphabetical database. Numbers first, right? Not the D. Okay, not the first thing. The number is there, and then it would be alphabetical after the numbers. Database, the drug class can be OTC or RX, can be controlled substance, schedule 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so there are various types of drug classes we can have. Item type, regular drug, as opposed to a compounded drug. Compounding is something that you'll see when you guys, if you haven't already, when you guys take Pharmacy 208. Gender, obviously, a vaginal cream is not going to be used in males. So there are drugs that are gender specific. You know, if you get to, typically for a male, gender specific drug would be prostate medications, since women don't have prostates, right? So there are drugs that are gender specific. Most drugs are not. Okay. Generic or brand, we can, and that refers to the name rather than to the drug class. That refers to the name. And default NDC, we have this here. NDC is the National Drug Code. It is an identifier that is specific to the active ingredient, package size, and manufacturer. Okay. The active ingredient is specified by the first 5 digits. The old NDC codes, you may see a few of those, only have 4. The second set of numbers is a 4-digit number. Again, the old NDC numbers, which are still in use for older products, have 3. This specifies the manufacturer. And lastly, the third double digit specifies package size. Okay, so because when a drug manufacturer packages drugs, they can be packaged in bottles of 100 or perhaps bulk bottles of 1,000. So the package size is critical. Okay. You can have a default SIG. This is for a drug that's used only one way. Okay. You can also change that. Any user instructions, etc. Sometimes we'll have to put these things in. So the form of the drug, this can be tablet, capsule, liquid, oral liquid, injectable. In this case, it's a cream drug with an applicator. Okay, it can also be a suppository, a lozenge, lots of different drug forms. Strength here is dependent on, again, the type of drug. It might be milligrams, it might be milliliters, it might be percentages. This just tells us what is in this particular form. Many drugs come in many different forms, so we need that. Drug units, this dispensed by grams as opposed to milliliters, and the units are grams. Package size, this is a package size that's standard for this particular product. It's a 21-gram tube. Okay. Maximum dose, well, we don't worry about that because we're talking about something that is applied. Days to expire, this is a default number. It will depend on the product. Compounded, if you go into a pharmacy to get some amoxicillin suspension for your child, you'll get a liquid. It will have a 14-day expiration date on it. Okay. Most drugs will have a lot. This particular days to expire might be expiration of the prescription, but the drug itself, most drugs have carry expiration dates. They carry them on the label. You've seen them. Expires, whatever. December 2025 or something like that. You'll see that. These are experimentally determined for packaged drugs coming directly from the FDA or from the manufacturer. Drugs that we formulate, even if that means just taking a powder and mixing it with distilled water, which is what happens with your amoxicillin suspension, drugs that we formulate have to be given what we really call a use-by date. It's not an expiration date because we have no experimental data. What we have is standards that are dictated by an organization known as the United States Pharmacopoeia and National Formulary, which is the body that regulates how we formulate drugs like that. And is an outgrowth of an older set of instructions called the United States Dispensary. A number of years ago, a student of mine found in a bookstore in a small town in Kansas a copy of the United States Dispensary manual from 1894. Sucker was this thick. I mean, huge. And I opened it up and started laughing because in 1894, I could formulate drugs in my pharmacy that would get me arrested today. Lots and lots of cocaine and morphine and other goodies. So it's it's a nice historical document. I still have it on my shelf at home as a fond memory of having taught that class. So, but we have here, we have the drug packaging is our first field. Pricing, we can actually put in prices for these things because when we do compounding, which you'll do later in this mod, you'll do some compounding. We actually calculate a price. And then information, various information that you really won't need to worry about for purposes of this class. But the important thing is this first field. Now, again, we can do a search. Note here, we can add drugs. This symbol, the blank page, is typically, you've seen this many times in Microsoft's material, is a new drug. We can add a drug. So if we click that, then everything disappears. The pointer starts there. Okay? As I said, you're not going to use this. So you have two ways of moving between fields. You can tab, or you can simply click on the field you want to work in next. Okay? All the way down. So having put in a label name, I might do a tab and end up going to the quick code. After that, Alchemy product ID, which I just told you don't need. Drug class, again, controlled substance, Schedule 2, over-the-counter or prescription. Okay, so we're going to cancel out of that. Item type, compound. This is where we actually compound a drug. You'll deal with that later. Durable medical equipment, you won't be dealing with that. Maintenance drug, regular drug, rental DME, supply item. Mostly you're going to be dealing with regular drugs. Okay? Gender, both. Okay? We've got exclusively, most commonly, etc. So we'll have those. Brand and generic, we have the two choices, brand or generic. And you'll be told when you do the exercises which one to choose. If we go to compound, we now start getting into something different. And so we won't be doing that for a couple of weeks. So we'll go through what that means, because we can actually mix drugs here, and we will be doing that for some hospital applications. Form, strength, drug unit, note, that's each, such as suppositories, or grams or milliliters. So grams would be how we actually measure the drug in terms of potency. Milliliters is for liquid drugs, obviously. Units is going to be, depends on how it's delivered. Amp is an ampule. Ampule is a little sealed vial of sterile product that has no preservatives in it. It's a single-use product that we break open and take drugs out of. Capsules, cartridge. There are drugs, injectable drugs that are actually, especially ones that are used you've probably seen when you've gone to the dentist and they've given you an injection of Novocaine. It's usually in one of those big steel syringes that has a cartridge of the drug in it. So that's how it's delivered. We've got a dose. We have each, again, tablets or suppositories, grams, kits. There are drugs that have to be sort of put together. Lozenge, milliliters, ounces, suppository, pre-filled syringes, tablets, or vials. Okay, so there's all these different forms. You'll be told in general what to make use of. The default for days to expire is 365. If that needs to change, you will change it. These default quantity, default day supply will be calculated, should be calculated for you. Okay, so that's how we maneuver. So when we are done, we can save, or if we've actually put information in here, this really means save and add another. This means more. So if we have a list of patients we're putting in, instead of going back every time and calling up the original screen and closing things out, we can simply click the more and do another of the same thing. Okay? So it actually works pretty well. We can cancel or we can close. And we're going to cancel out. We're going to cancel. We're going to do this. Okay, don't be nasty. So we're going to cancel. We don't want to save our changes, and we're out. So you'll see insurance plans too. If we go in here, it's the same basic taskbar. There are some other things. So we have insurance plan data, pricing parameters, and electronic billing options. You will actually do an insurance enter in this class. So be ready for that. So we're going to close out of that as well. All right, questions right at the beginning? All right, well, guess what? It's 10 o'clock. Let's take a break. We'll come back after our break and go into some of the work, all right? Okay. Okay, let's get started again. Casey will be back in a minute or two, I'm sure. We need to get moving. Has anyone started any of the assignments? Okay, so let's take a look. This is assignment A for the week. There are several assignments each week. If you read down, there'll be some general remarks about the assignment, and we have it broken up in a number of parts. Each part, you'll see this link to a Word document. Each part has its own Word document, so bring it up when you and use that as how you're going to actually do the assignment, because it tells you which parts of each of these assignments you're going to do. The video here about screenshots, you all know how to do screenshots. And so that's actually how you'll do it. You'll take screenshots of the work, and that's your report. You'll edit those, copy those into your Word document, and then submit it to me in the submission box. I will take a look at it and give you a grade. Okay? I will tell you, my view is that if you do what you're supposed to do, which is do all of the assignments, put in all the screenshots, you'll get 100% of the grade. I'll take a look and make sure you're not just putting in a blank screenshot. I've actually never had a student try that on me. So I appreciate the fact that you guys are here to learn and you're not going to try and play games with me. So go ahead and just put them in. I will take a look at them, just make sure that everything's there. Because if you've missed something, I'll give you some feedback on it. And let you try again. All right? I don't have a problem with trying something again. If you decide to try again because you've left something out to improve your grade, shoot me an email that says you've done it. I don't necessarily see that you have done the assignment a second time. It's one of the parts about Canvas that are a little harder for instructors. So if you decide to redo, let me know so I know to go back and regrade. I can do that. And I don't have a problem doing that. I want you guys to learn. Okay? So after you do that, what you will come up with is, let's see, this ought to be there. Why is that not there? There it is. You'll come up with a Word document, which it'll come up in closed mode, so you'll have to click the little edit document box at the top of the page, right? So this is part of it here. So we'll tell you, in lab 1, you're going to read the information, and then on page 6, add this doctor. Now, okay, so you're going to add Dr. Caitlin Judith to the database. So you'll screenshot and place it here in this location of the form. Then you'll go to lab 2. You'll be adding a new patient to the database in a community pharmacy setting, okay? Community pharmacies are like your Walgreens, King Soopers, etc., as opposed to compounding pharmacies or specialty pharmacies or hospital pharmacies. Although the hospital pharmacies have a lot of the data, in a hospital pharmacy, we generally don't have to put any patient data into the system because the internal record system transfers that information into the pharmacy when the patient is admitted. So we don't have to really do that with a hospital pharmacy. And then you'll read these, you'll go through steps 1 through 29 on 7 to 12. We'll look at some of those in a minute. On page 13, you'll be adding these 3 patients and then just plug in the screenshots, and that's the end of the assignment. So each assignment will usually have about 2 functions, 2 labs they call it, because this is actually designed for a much broader course. Your screenshots will be there. So there will be some things that we will not do here because they won't work. If you're told to print certain things, that won't work. So just bear that in mind. We can, however, we'll go through some examples of things that you can do with patients. So this first set of labs will be that. So we're going to go back at this point, back to the week 1 assignment, and let's go through here and bring up the textbook. Okay. So we are in section 1. We have to go directly there, and then we'll have lab 1. Okay. So we have lab 1 here. We'll go through. We talked about using using the DEA structure to verify that it's correct. We've done that. If we look at the second page, we're going to note that there is an estimated completion time. 30 minutes is sort of an average. Some people will get through it a bit faster. Some people will be a little bit slower. If it takes you 45 minutes to do this, it doesn't mean anything other than it took you 45 minutes to do it. It is nothing about you. Take your time, don't try to rush them. So we're going to do what we talked about before. And in fact, we're going to be looking here at the information. And if the physician isn't there, we click the Add button. Okay. So the dialog box will appear in the number in the bottom of that screen that comes up with all the doctors' lists on it, starting with the first one, Abramon, I think his name was. Okay, starting with the first one, at the bottom you'll see an add box. So the name is required. So we're going to enter Larry Peterson. I'm not. We'll look at that. Address, phone number, all of these things are there. Again, we can use the initials, LP, as the quick code. Before you put in the DEA number, just check it. Get used to verifying. You should be able to do this very, very quickly after you've done it a few times. It's just simple addition and comparison. So again, remember verifying, we add numbers 1, 3, and 5. So that's going to be 1 plus 3 plus 9, which is 13. Or no, 1 plus 3 plus 8, excuse me. I'll get that right one of these days. That's 12. Two digits 2, 4, and 6. 2 plus 4 is 6, plus 9 is 15. Double that, 30. Add that to 12 that we got from the first one. We get 42. The checksum, the last digit, is going to be the last digit of that sum, right? Get used to that. Do that. And if you need to write it down on paper, write it down on paper. Who cares? Nobody's going to be there but you. You know, and you've just seen why I should be probably writing these things down on paper most of the time. So we have a license number. We get, again, these are not fields that must be filled, but we should be able to get that. Where do we get a state license number? There's several places. For one, the states all have databases of their providers. We can go in and get the information out of the provider database for the state. The Centers for Disease or Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMMS, also have a database of doctors who are eligible to receive Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement. So there are several places we can get these if it's not actually provided. Most of the time, you will find that when you get a prescription form, it will have that information, the DEA number and the state license number on it. What's not going to be on most of them is things like the NPI number, the National Provider Identifier, National Prescriber Identifier number, okay? And there will be times when you will be required to put that in. We will give you a valid number that you can use. The interesting thing in this database is you can use the same number for every physician or every prescriber. It just has to recognize that it's a valid number. How these numbers are assigned, I am not certain. But anyway, so we go on that. Go to the hospital. We can have him in City Hospital. Then we save it. Okay, so then Peterson is in. You need to go through these steps because Peterson's going to come up in the future in this class. So you need to not just read this and then go and do the assignment for Dr. Judith, but you need to put this in so you can do work later on. There is a purpose, believe it or not, to every bit of this. So then your field should look like this. Again, NPI is blank. Federal tax ID, that's not terribly important for this. So then you don't have to open a blank Word document. You have your Word document. So that's another thing. So then we close it up. And we move on to the next field, which is to put in Dr. Judith. Remember, last name first. So her last name, and I'm assuming Caitlin is a female, her last name is Judith. So when you go to put that in, you can start with JUD in the doctor field. Let's pull this up. Should have that available. Yeah. Doctors, and we can search, and we do JUD. Nothing happens, right? We enter, so we have to add the doctor manually because it doesn't appear. So here we hit yes, and we start adding Dr. Judith. Okay? So I'm going to step out of that. Now, note that this first one, Dr. Abamant, has an NPI number. A couple of suggestions. There's a number I will give you can use, or you can simply record this someplace where you can refer to it later. You can use this number over and over again when you need to put in an NPI. You will be required to at one point, at least, during this class. Go back and edit the doctor to put the NPI in. So be aware, any of these valid numbers is usable. Okay? You'll also actually be given one. So here we have, this material. So let's go back now to back to the book. So we have a whole list. If you were in a full semester course, which is what this is really designed, you'd put all of these guys in. That, to me, is a waste of time. Once you know how to do it, you know how to do it. And we don't need to, most of these will never be seen again, as I recall. Or you can put somebody in of your own choosing. You can put your own doctor in, just for laughs if you want. Okay? So let's go to the next page here. Let's back up and see. We got here through this, right? So that will be what you do for this particular lab. So let's move on now to the second lab. No, just stop that. Adding a new patient. So adding a new patient is something that we do. You all know that when you go into a new pharmacy, they make you fill out all the usual paperwork. They take that information and they do exactly this with it. If you've not had a prescription filled at a pharmacy before, they have to put you into their system in order to get the insurance payment from whoever your insurer may be, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid or your personal insurance plan. In order to do that, all of these reimbursements are submitted through these systems. They will submit every day, several times, a lot of times, depending on how busy the pharmacy is, the CMS 1500 form that you either are already familiar with or you will see in your billing and coding classes. It's the standard form that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services uses, and the insurers have gone to it. This is a boon for us in the pharmacy because in the old days, which isn't that very long ago, to be honest, every insurer had its own form. And so you'd be filling out forms for every insurer, and they'd be different. And it was a real pain in the neck. And of course, if you made one small error, left out a comma, didn't put in a field they liked, they would reject the claim and you'd have to resubmit. It was a real pain in the neck. Now we've gone to a unified form. The only difference is that in most of the software that I've heard about, there's a limit of 5 claims per form. So you might submit a dozen of these in a day. But that's all right, because it automatically does it. It fills it out correctly. So we have reduced the denials significantly. And again, denials are something that you'll be dealing with no matter where you are in the medical field. A number of years ago, I went to a seminar on medical billing in Denver as part of our continuing ed efforts at the school. And a health attorney got up and said, look, just expect it. The insurance companies routinely deny 25% of all claims, whether there's anything wrong with them or not. They just routinely deny them. Why? Because there are a certain number of people who will simply say, oh, well, I guess they're not going to pay, and not follow up. And then there are those of us like my wife and me, you're not going to pay. Wait and see what happens next. And after a while, we don't get denials anymore because our insurers know that we will say, oh, no, you don't. So they go deny somebody else. And I'm sorry for that, but too bad. They don't bug us anymore. So you do have that as a standard. So you just expect it. And so what happens in the office is you'll go back and take a look and just see if there's a reason. I mean, maybe you have left out an important field. And then you just resubmit it, and they usually pay. But the insurance companies are getting blasted for that these days, so that may be reducing. But nonetheless, denials are typical. But the CMS 1500 form has made things much, much better. So in this, you're going to be adding some patients to the database. So you'll go through the first 29 steps here and go through and start adding. The first one is to add this person, Mary Shedlock. Okay, she is a patient. So you're going to add that, going to add her to it. And remember the data, we have the name and we have Shedlock, and then we have different fields for the name. So we're going to have, we add the name by using last name, comma, space, first name, single space, and the middle initial. Okay. Followed by a period, or if the entire name is known, put the whole name in. Okay. We don't necessarily worry about that. Okay. So birth date. Birth date is always MMDDYYYY. Why is that? Well, this is 2019. We still have most of our patients are going to have been born in the 20th century. So putting in the last two digits of the year is not going to work anymore. In fact, it never actually worked because there are always people who are over 100 years old. So we use that particular one, but the issue is MMDD, month, day. In other parts of the world, it's day, month. And there are government forms, the bloody things, that reverse that. So you have to be aware. In this particular software, month, day, year. Okay. Q codes, quick codes. You can even you can leave it out, or you can put in the first and last initial and a 6-digit MMDDYY version of their birth date. In this particular case, Mary Shedlock is a private pay patient, doesn't have insurance. So you note that pay type. Note gender, okay? Now we go into this interesting field of family, okay? One we do is we enter the information about the family dialogue. And we enter that information and use what we call the head of household or family head for designating the part of the family. So if there's a family head not found, we have to enter a family head. We can designate the person as their own head of household, doesn't matter. You will find all sorts of other things as well as you go through. So now we have this field for Mary Shedlock. Note or the family name. Under the family name, we have Mary's husband, Matthew. Okay, that's head of household, same address. So again, all we need is limited information. All we really need is the name for head of household. And then we close out, we save it and close out of that part of the field. Now, you may end up closing out the tab, the patient entry field. If you have to, go back and do a search for Shedlock, S-H-E, come up, reopen Mary, and first off, hit the edit button. Okay? Sometimes it will just close it out. It depends on how things have been set up. We had that problem with the old version. This is version 3, and I taught version 2 for years down in Denver. And that used to do that. So they may have fixed that. Okay, so now we get the medication issue. So we look at the bottom half of the customer form. Remember I showed you where allergies were. So we submit an allergy. We add a new icon. Let's go back to that form. Bring up. Oh, come on. Okay, we want to go back here. Back to, we're going to close out of doctors. We're going to go to customers. And if you go down here to the bottom half, remember, this is where the allergies field is. So if we click on allergies, if we do this with this one, over here you'll see on the side, because we didn't do edit. Let's do edit. If we click over here on the side, you'll see new. Not new up here. Note that when we're down in the allergies field, we don't have a new button up here, but we do have a new button down in the allergies field. So we can add. So I'm just going to make up an allergy. We have Zithromax, so I'm going to install that allergy. We click on new, and guess what? We have to look it up. So ZIT, okay. So we have several. So Zithromax was what is written in there. That's all we have to write. The Tri-Pack and the Z-Pack are just delivery methods, all right? So if we click on Zithromax, we can either double click it or click it once and click OK, then it is added to the database, right? And now we simply save, and we're done with Abston Kinley as far as I'm concerned. So let's go back to the instruction set. Where's that? Okay. Here we are. So in this case, we're going to add morphine. So we click on OK and enter the drug lookup name. Okay. So the other drugs tab contains information about drugs being currently used. So again, we can add a new. We want to click on vitamin E soft gel. Okay. So what we want to do is add that to the other drugs list that the patient is taking. Disease profile, again, click on that, click on the new, and then we can add a disease profile. In the case of Mary, it's diabetes mellitus. Make sure you choose diabetes mellitus. Diabetes, there are several forms of diabetes. So you make sure you choose the proper one, all right? So click on save, and then we've got Mary in here. We have our notes, patient hard of hearing in left ear. That's good. We need to know that so that we talk more to her right side. So we have various information about this patient. So then we close. Okay, so we've gone down here through 29. We're not going to print Mary Shedlock's screen. Okay, if we go back now to the worksheet, let's see. That's not right. Where's the worksheet? Here we go. Okay. We are going to then only enter Ray Rule, Robert Gamble, and Julie Douglas off the choices at the end. Okay. So always refer to the instruction sheet, the report form. Otherwise, you'll do things that are not required, that you don't need to do. There are several things here that we have pulled out of these labs because you know, this isn't a full semester course. This is not something that you'll be doing over and over again. Okay, so let's go back to here, and then we'll go back to the assignment and back to course modules. So we've looked at that. So that's assignment 1. The second assignment, B, pulls up. And again, if you go down here, we have a link to a Word document that has the same title, but the actual link takes you to the proper report form for this particular lab. So we're going to bring this up, and again, click Enable Editing. Come on. It's not working. Okay. There we go. Now it's working. Okay, so we're going to now, all right, I'm going to share this with my, all right, so here, again, lab 3, we're going to complete a certain number of steps. And this one is changing a patient profile or prescriber information. So this is how do we edit. So this will lead you through the editing process for changing the name here on page 18 is what we call a quick challenge. This will make use of the information in the preceding pages to actually do a task. And in this case, you're going to change the name of Dr. Karen Davis to Karen Davis-Bentfeldt. So obviously she changed her name. So you'll actually change a doctor's name there, and again, print out the page. In the fourth lab, we've got making a change to third-party payment information, i.e. insurance. Okay, so we're going to complete a bunch of that. We'll go to we'll go to a couple of exercises here. You'll answer, in some cases, instead of putting in a screenshot, you'll answer questions. Okay, so answer those questions on this form and submit it when you're done. Okay, so let's actually go back and look at this, these two labs. All right. Need to find the right screen here. We'll do this the hard way then. Okay, so we'll go here to the book and okay, so making a change to the patient profile. Again, the way these start off, there's some information here. This information is really important to read. It will teach you, it'll give you some ideas to what you're actually going to do. So we need to update a patient profile. We'll learn how to do that. You'll go through this process. So we click on customers and find Smith. Now, Smith is a common last name, so make sure you get John M. Smith. Okay, you'll find a Smith John. Okay, go to John M. Okay, so we're going to change his date of birth and then save it and then close it out. Okay, so here we have what happens when we change that date of birth. Okay, note that he has some insurance plan information down here, which is good to know. So don't worry about, don't worry about the instructions here about asking another student to verify that you've changed the information. So we are going here to looking at changing, again, a bit of change for Dr. Bosworth, Dr. Robert Bosworth. Again, go to the physicians, search, BOS, and if you get a long list that goes more than just one page on that screen, on that drop down, add the fourth letter. That will reduce the choices. BOS, the three letters is just the minimum you should use. It helps sometimes to use four. So here we go. Here's the quick challenge that you're going to do, changing Dr. Davis's number to Davis Bendfeld. Okay. So adding third-party payment information to the database. Okay, so third-party information is basically your insurance information. So we're going to actually look at what it takes to add that information. There are also what we call PBMs, Pharmacy Benefits Managers. It's a clearinghouse. Pharmacy PBMs are used by the insurance companies to manage their pharmacy benefits. So be aware that you'll be putting in PBM numbers as well. So you're going to click on Insurance Plan and click on New. All right, let's go to looking at the insurance plans. So we're going to close out of there and go to insurance plans. So again, if we add new, we get a choice, and we may have to add a plan. All right. So go back again to here. So you want to add a plan. So we enter COS PLS as the plan name. Plan doesn't exist, so we click Add Plan at that insurance plan lookup dialog box. Okay. Choose Hold Prescription, Hold RX as the company name. So we'll use that as a company, tab to the company data name. Follow these directions. We're going to skip a bunch of fields as well. So we put in the choices. They lead you through. They give you numbers to use for the pharmacy. We use electronic billing. Enter 365 as max days for refills. What that is from a pharmacy standpoint is a prescription is good for 365 days. The prescription may come in with 4 or 5 or 6 refills on it, usually 5 at the most. If the patient doesn't refill all of those within 365 days, tough luck. At the end of 365, he needs a new prescription. Okay, so they put a limit on this so that there's not this liability out there for more prescriptions. This is as much a financial and bookkeeping issue as anything else. Okay, so we have a maximum number of refills. All of them put that. It's going to be what the maximum number of refills will be specified by the insurance company. Maximum days supply, that means that each refill cannot be for more than that many days. Now, prescriptions can be for, generally speaking, anywhere up to 90 days for chronic drugs like blood pressure medication, antidepressant medication, and so forth. So they will run up to 90 days for prescriptions. But the insurance plan can say, no, we won't pay for 90 days worth of anything. So the maximum days supply can be only X, and they will do that sometimes. Dispense generic unless DAW. DAW is dispense as written. There are 7 DAW codes. A 0 means that that it can be generically filled. DAW1 means the physician is requiring a brand name. When a brand name drug is prescribed and required, copays will go up, sometimes drastically. Because what happens is the patient will be required as a copay to pay the difference between the generic price and the originator price, the brand name price. And that can be hundreds of dollars. Now, the doctors can prescribe what they want, and we cannot, at least in the state of Colorado, we cannot change that. If a patient looks at it and you know, turns the color of a blank sheet of paper and says, I can't afford that, we can call the doctor and say, can we give this patient a generic? Usually, most doctors are not big. When I was a young man, the generic industry was really getting off the ground, and it was awful. There would be drugs that would look like drugs, but they had no active ingredient in them. Or they'd have 5 times the strength they were supposed to. The quality control in the generic industry was so bad that doctors routinely would not allow generic drugs to be used on their patients. And that carried over for many years. The generic industry has improved. There are very, very few products that the generics are not as good. And it's individualized. One of the ones I hear about is Ambien, the sleep aid. I've heard from a number of people that generic Ambien does not work, whereas the brand name does. And there are some reasons for that that I can speculate about, but nonetheless, there are some. There's also a few really funny glitches. Some drugs, like levothyroxine, which is sold under Levithroid, Synthroid, and several other names. Generally speaking, for one reason or another, if a patient is taking a form of levothyroxine from a specific manufacturer, whether it be generic or brand, we have found that they're best kept from that same manufacturer, because for whatever reason, the manufacturing process changes slightly the way these drugs are absorbed. And so patients will either get too much or not enough from another manufacturer. It's a real weird situation. So I've actually seen pharmacies that would have to specifically order from, say, Watson Pharmaceuticals for the Synthroid for a patient, rather than take whatever they happen to have on their shelf from, one of the other generics. So there are occasions when it makes some sense, but for the most part, it doesn't, okay? So we have the ability to add sales tax. Colorado doesn't tax prescriptions, so we wouldn't do that. OTC covered, depends on the insurance plan. In this particular case, the OTC drugs are covered, so in this case, you'd check that box. Okay, so all of these different cost preference, average wholesale price, manufacturer's average cost, or direct cost. Average wholesale price, obviously, is the wholesalers will buy bulk quantities, and we're talking millions of doses of drugs from pharmaceutical companies, store those in their facilities for local delivery, and they get a big price break from the pharmacy. So the wholesale price that they have is based on what they pay the pharmacy plus a markup for them. And that's the average across wholesalers in the region that you live. Manufacturer's average cost, that's provided by the manufacturers. This data is picked up by the insurers through the various databases. So they have a choice for how they are going to reimburse the pharmacy for each drug. So we have to choose that. So preference number 2 is chosen by default in Visual Superscript, but it doesn't have to be. So we go through all of this. Brand markup is whatever whatever the pharmacy marks up the product for brand name products. So again, it's one digit for each percentage, each 10% of markup. So 1% would be, or 1 in that field would be a 10% markup. A 5 would be a 50% markup. Okay. Excuse me, they've changed it. 1.1 would be a 10%. So it's 0.1 for every 10%. So a doubling of the price would be 2. So it's just basically what we multiply the product. So they've actually changed that in this version. Okay. The insurance companies allow pharmacies to charge a dispensing fee. So each pharmacy has negotiated, or with the insurance company, will just say, this is what you can charge for a dispensing fee. So some will allow $350, some will allow $3, some will allow $4. Some will allow less, some more. So OTC drugs, the brand markup could be a different number. This in 1.25 is $1.25, right? So copay, we enter the copays. We know copays are all over the place. Some of the other more accounting is there. So we have this is a whole series of things you would enter for this particular insurance company. Okay. So in the end, what do we have? We have pricing parameters. Note that the center tab here, although it's not obvious, is the one that's to the forward. The other two are behind it. So this is, we have tabbed over and gone to varying different fields here. So now we're going to look at billing options. These are critical to the success of your pharmacy, which is why I'm spending so much time talking. And we're going to take a break. We're late now, so let's take our second break now. Okay, let's go ahead and start again. Just a quick word about the electronic billing options. There are a number of them. They can be done as through several different organizations. So we're just going to choose here, and this one we're going to use HCS as the process control number and carrier ID. So all of this stuff has to be entered in, or billing becomes not possible. So click on Save at the end of that. Okay. So then at the end of that, you'll see a screen that has this kind of information on it. Again, not everything needs to be filled out. Certain things do need to be there. If we're going to do electronic billing, we have to have certain information there. So have some questions to answer at the end of that. Okay. So the next task that you will address will be adding a drug to the database. Again, let's talk about that. This description of NDC is not the right length. For standards these days, it's a 542 number instead of a 442 number. But again, we have that's interesting. That should have been more up to date, considering when it was done. So it describes what the NDC number is, and when we enter a drug into the database, we do have to have that NDC number. How do we find the NDC number if we don't know what it is? Well, again, the internet's a great tool. If you simply use a search engine to look for a drug, what you'll find is a number of entries. Please ignore Wikipedia. It's not a good source of that information because it doesn't have information that we need, and all those entries are written by drug companies. So drug companies have certain rules that they have to follow, but it doesn't necessarily mean you get the information you want. You'll find a number of different drug databases, such as rxlist.com, WebMD, drugs.com. You can always find, if you get into those, next week I'll probably bring up a couple of databases and go through it and show you what kinds of information we can find. But we can get the NDC numbers out of those databases. We can also get the NDC number by going to the FDA.gov website, which has a drugs tab. We click on drugs and we can wander through that. I personally find some of the other databases, RxList, Global RPH, RPH means registered pharmacist. Several of those other databases, the information is a little easier to find. My personal opinion. I have my personal favorite. Everybody can pick out what they like and follow that. Okay. So in that lab, you'll be in the third lab, you'll do the task of adding drug information. I'd like to get on to a couple of other things today before we get. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. Okay. I wanted to go to entering new prescriptions into in the databases, because that's really the key. Let's take a look here at a prescription. We have the doctor's name. Prescriptions require that. They require information. You need to know who the patient is. Address for the patient isn't necessary. It often is there. It's a good way to check that you have the right patient, however. So if we go in, our databases already have Holly Bean in them, so you'll be able to find her. So we have, the way this is written, this is another form. The date has to be there. Prescriptions expire. Some, most pharmacies will have a policy as to how old a prescription can be when it's brought in and can be filled. And it will depend on the type of drug. Controlled substance prescriptions that are old can't be brought in and filled. No pharmacy will do that. However, other pharmacies will take a prescription that's a week old. Some will take a month. If you go in with a prescription that was written a month ago and you're just getting it filled now, one of the first questions is going to be, why are you coming in a month late? Now, do you still need this drug? And it may be confirmed with the doctor. So every pharmacy has its own policy set. So we look on here, we find the doctor's DEA number, state license number, signed, has to be signed. And then we have the prescription. We have the prescription reads Amoxil, 875 milligrams, and we're going to give 30 of those. Okay. We have 1 tab PO TID times 3 days. 1 tablet by mouth 3 times a day. Remember, BID is 2, 3 is T. And for 3 days. So we have all of that information on that. The RX, the 1 tab POTID is the thing I called a SIG when we were looking at prescriptions and the in-class activity on Monday. The identifier amoxil is a trade name. It's a trade name for amoxicillin. Down here under the DAW code section of the prescription, remember DAW is dispense as written. Substitutions allowed, which means that we can give generics. Okay. So if we're doing this now, we're going to come over here and read all of that. So we've read that, and so that's what we're looking for on the pharmacy. It's not a controlled substance. Therefore, I didn't say check the DEA number, because it doesn't matter, since it's not a controlled substance. The only control is that it can only be dispensed with a prescription. We cannot buy amoxicillin over the counter. Not in this country. So we're going to go in and work on a prescription. In this case, we've got a prescription from a different doctor for Lipitor. And here we are requiring brand name. Lipitor is a lipid-lowering agent. It is an anti-cholesterol agent. So we're looking at 40 milligrams. And this is the SIG. Take 1 at HS. Remember what HS means? HS is one of those few medical abbreviations that's not Latin. It means hour of sleep. It means bedtime. Okay? And we're supposed to dispense 30 of these things. The implication is that whatever the dosage form, tablet or capsule, that it's a 40 milligram strength. So we would be finding that. Okay? So we want to fill the RX. The first thing we do, let's go back over here and look at visual superscript on this. And we're going to close this out, and we're going to fill an RX. Okay. So now the question is, we want a new prescription. And the first thing that happens is we check the date. Okay. Now, that we want to confirm that should be the date that's on the prescription. Ignore the prescription date in your book, because it will tell you it's out of date. Okay. So the tech initials here are yours. We have to put tech initials in. So we have that. And it may or may not let us do that right away. The RPH should go in as the standard for whatever your pharmacy is. RPH is registered pharmacist. Okay. So RX origin is written. There are other choices. It could have been electronic, could have been faxed, telephoned. Okay. The only prescriptions that have to be written and carried in are for Schedule II controlled substances, opiates, amphetamines, etc. Okay. Other than that, they can be called in, faxed in, emailed in, or brought. Okay. So we have that. So the next tab is the customer name. Remember who the customer was? I don't. Right? So here is where it's useful to have some things written down. So if we go back now to take a look at the customer name, we're coming over here, and it's Kenneth Sharp, and the doctor is Thompson. Okay, so let's go back to visual superscript, and we type in the customer name, SHA, hit return, and up comes Kenneth Sharp. Okay. So we click OK, and note what is automatically populated. Okay, his address, birth date, information that we need. So then we have a doctor. Remember, the doctor was Thompson. Okay, and was John Thompson. So we highlight him, double click on him, that goes in. Okay, so the nice thing is it goes in. If we have to do something like add an NPI number, which we don't here, we'd click on doctor. That will allow us to either change the doctor name or edit the doctor. Okay, the drug. Okay, the drug name goes in, LIP, Lipitor. Again, first three letters, hit the return button, and what do we have? We get a list of drugs that start LIP. Lipitor 40 milligram tablet was what was specified by the doctor. I remember that from the prescription. So we click on that and either double click or click OK. And it immediately ignore these errors. Ignore until you get done, right? Till it goes back to this. So he said that brand is necessary, so we cannot use atorvastatin, which is the generic name for Lipitor. So we click on Lipitor and come down here and click in the manufacturer field, and it automatically populates that with the manufacturer, the NDC number, and the average wholesale price. Look at that price. Okay, it's there. Okay, so we have that. Package size is not, that's package size 90 is what's in the pharmacy. It has nothing to do with what you're going to fill. All right, nothing at all. So ignore that. So we have a few other fields. So the next thing we're going to be doing is actually go to the refill field. And I don't remember how many refills there were. So we'll go back to that. 2 refills. And we're dispensing 30 tablets. Okay. Okay. So let's go back now to Visual Superscript. Okay, so we have 2 refills. Prescribed quantity is 30. Note that it automatically calculates how much you're going to dispense. And it does so because this package size of 90 has more than the dispensed in it. So it's not going to give you anything. Remaining quantity has nothing to do with the patient. Okay. We have to put in the DAW. DAW is, as I said, dispense as written. So the physician has required that. Patient can refuse a DAW, in which case you have to contact the physician. We cannot change a prescription. In fact, if that happens to you when you're working with a patient, you immediately go to your pharmacist. Okay? So the pharmacist can decide that. Why would they do that? Well, maybe that's the only thing on the shelf. No generic available, right? In the strength that they want. Price is a generic. These can be allowed at times, mandated by law, okay, or none available in the fact, or there can be another. So these things, the important one to remember is number 1. Usually you're not going to have a patient arguing about generics. I've never had a patient do that. So we're going to put that in. SIG here in English. What you do is type the following. The way the SIG was written was 1HS, right? What we have to do is, these are tablets. We type in T for take, 1 for 1, T for tablet. Note what it's doing. It's actually translating that. HS, and enter. Now, note that it doesn't put it in English. It doesn't recognize HS. So we need to change that. Okay, we're going to have to go back up. It's not allowing that. So let's do the 30 days is the prescribed, and the dispensed is going to be 30. Okay, 30. 30. Let's go back up here. T. 1T. We're going to get rid of the T. Okay. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to take one tablet. For some reason, this isn't working correctly. It should have said at bedtime. So it should have typed it in. Mine isn't doing it. You might be able to get it to work right. But we should have been able to type in HS. Obviously, that's missing from their database. But normally speaking, it will translate that. I apologize for that. That's nonsense. But there we have, and we've done that. We've done that. So now we are going to save we have the chance of saving it and adding another prescription. Prescriptions can come multiple to a prescription form. So we can add another one for the patient, or we can simply save it. Okay. All right. So let's go back now to our instructions. Okay. So we're going to have entered all of this material. Okay. Ignore the stuff about approval from the instructor. There was the problem. We left out the PO because it's take one tablet by mouth. POHS should have done it correctly. So let's go back. I'm going to try and edit this. See if we can do that now. Doesn't look like I can edit. Okay, so that was the key here, was to put in T1T. Okay, let's back up. T1T POHS at bedtime. So again, this system is kind of rote. You have to put in everything. But route of administration is critical. T1T PO by mouth at bedtime. So it does recognize it, and I apologize for that. But we'll simply save this one now, and it'll be done. So let's go back to the to this. So we put in the SIG in English, and we got in the dispense. So now we have, I haven't pulled up the instruction packet. It'll tell you what to do next. You'll probably be entering 1 or 2 prescriptions. But again, all of those are key. Remember, you tab And when you enter when you choose the name of the drug from that drop-down menu that it gives you, when you give the drug, when you get to that field, if you click on it, it will automatically populate the field with the manufacturer, the price, the NDC, everything else. So it does a lot of the work for you. Okay, and I think the last one of these we do, and we've got several here. Processing a new prescription for a patient with a third-party payment type. So we're going to have some health plan information to put in. I'm going to let you play with that. Okay. So questions? No? Okay. So we've got a couple of choices at this point for the rest of today's class. I can let you guys get started, which I think probably is what we should do, let you get started so you can see how you handle this software, and in case you run into any issues, we can talk about it. Or we can go back and look at some more prescriptions. Did everybody bring the prescription list from Monday? Okay. We could go back and do some more prescription interpretations. So which would you prefer to do? Get started on these so we can see how you are doing with handling the software, or look at prescriptions for a while? Pardon, Erica? Okay. Anyone argue with that? I see some head shaking here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I will, Veronica, would you please flip the lights on? And we'll just end with this. Okay. Okay. For the person who should watch this because she can't be here today, when you watch it, I want you to send me an email, and I want you to send me an email with the word Copenhagen, Copenhagen, in the title so that I know you've listened to it. I'm going to stop this recording now.